to by Mrs. Dr. Lupo.
And I'm Sam, and today we're going to be talking about body image and basically our journeys to get to where we are now.
We have two amazing guests, Bluejay and Frank the Pegasus, and we can't wait to discuss everything with them. Remember that this is a sensitive topic, so this is something that might be a trigger warning for you. Feel free to skip this week's episode. We totally understand, but we hope that we can create a safe and loving, supporting place for you to be part of our conversation. If you guys want to catch us live, it's every Friday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific on Twitch.
Or if you would like to get more magical content, be sure to subscribe here. Thank you.
Okay, bye. Make sure you unmute yourselves.
Yeah. So we will start with Bluejay. If you want to let everybody know about you, what your content is, and your pronouns, please.
Awesome. Hi everybody. I'm Bluejay. My pronouns are she, her. I guess I could say I'm a professional model and photographer and role player and Twitch streamer and pool cat, professional dog mom. And I make a lot of really cool stuff on the internet. In terms of body image, I would say that like my modeling has created a interesting journey in terms of my own body image. So like that's what I'm here to talk about, and I'm really excited to share with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And then our lovely Frank, who is above me.
Hi, I'm Frank the Pegasus. I'm a content creator across all platforms. I stream on Twitch, and we talk a lot about body image and my journey, especially being a fat woman and kind of obviously visibly fat all the time. So I'm really excited to share some of that with you. But it's something that has been very integral to my social media presence, just because it's very integral to me.
Yeah.
Yay.
What are your pronouns, if I may ask?
Oh, she, her. Thanks for asking.
Beautiful. Of course. Thank you for saying. All right. Well then, I'm so excited about this conversation because this is something we just all go through, and it's not subject to only just women. Let's make that very clear. Um, everyone definitely goes through this at some point in their lives, or kind of always, honestly. So let me pull up our questions. Where are they? Where am I?
Current show. We do plan on having another episode. Might not be back to back, but in the future, because we do want to bring on some men and have some male perspective on what it's like as well. Because talking about this with my husband, and he was just like, "You're having guys on too," and I was like, "Yeah, it's something we wanted to talk about for sure." And he's like, "All right," because the amount of times that I'm told that I'm XYZ, whatever, in front of thousands of people every day definitely takes a toll. So we will be bringing on a male perspective at some point too. And then I just wanted to hug him whenever he talks about that.
Go ahead. Was that Frank? Or
I feel like the experience with body image issues when relating to like women, people of color, and men can all be like very different experiences, because largely I think of the way that things are marketed to these different people and the way that they're portrayed in media. I feel like that really influences the different issues that each group tends to go through. And so I feel like you could definitely have this conversation and get very different answers with people from like all of those areas. So I would really be interested in seeing like this conversation again with some people of color, this conversation again with male guests, and just like seeing the different ways in which like people are affected by body image issues and the media, especially.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, as a person of color, I'm sure it's completely different. And as a person that maybe is transitioning, that's completely different. Somebody that is not straight, I'm sure that's completely different as well. There's definitely a mold that is portrayed to every single community and lifestyle and culture, and it's crazy.
I think it's also really important to like note where a lot of, especially if we're going to talk about the way like society starts to market bodies, and like that kind of being the stem of where a lot of body image comes from, that actually doesn't stem from a white perspective at all. It's all like looking at Black bodies. It comes from a very race driven thing. Of like, I recommend Fearing the Black Body as a book to kind of like get an idea of the history of specifically like fat phobia in society. But Yeah. So I think absolutely you could have this conversation multiple times and get just very, very different perspectives going on. This is just one that we're kind of going to present today, I guess.
There's so much
So
we could talk about, that's for sure.
right,
But thank
I
you for
mean,
bringing that up. I actually haven't heard of that book, so I appreciate you enlightening me.
this could even be like its own podcast, right? Or just we're
Yeah.
just
We
talking
already
about
talked
body
about how
image
you can
and
have
just
4
go through
different
the masses.
episodes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. 10, 20
Yeah.
episodes. We might not even scratch the surface. Cause yeah, if you find somebody that maybe their family's more traditional in the cultural values of things versus just what like society is, or maybe, you
Yeah.
know, it's so
It's
weird.
like
I
your
watched a YouTube
placement.
video yesterday about it where they were talking about how the standard body image is very Eurocentric. And where, you know, people in Europe and America, we want darker skin. We always say like, oh my gosh, I'm so pale or whatever kind of thing. But then people in like Asian culture, they want lighter skin. And people in African American culture, they've been told they should have lighter skin. And a lot of
Yeah.
people of color don't want their kids to have the same color skin as them because they don't want them because they already have this negative feeling on their skin color that they want their skin to be lighter so they can be more accepted and stuff like that. And it just is it's so crazy. But then in some cultures it's perfectly normal for women the more curvy and voluptuous a woman is more ideal versus other ones. It's the thinner and more structured form, and it changes throughout the history
Oh,
too,
yeah. It's
right?
always changing, that's
It's
for
so
sure.
confusing.
Yeah, I remember whenever I was in China and they sorry, my surrogate mom, she was taking me around. I think we were in Xi'an, and we were walking around a temple, and she pointed at somebody's calf, a woman's calves, and she was like, "I wish my calves were that small." And I was like, "Girl, you're so tiny. What?"
How can you get
And
smaller?
but I never think about calves at all. Like mine's like maybe my belly or like my arms or something, but like calves? And it's wild to see how insecure we are about minute things. Like things that
Hmm.
shouldn't be overtaking our mind. We were in a beautiful setting and she was focused on her calves looking too big. And I was like, "Oh, I just want to hug you." That I couldn't imagine because they're in a very fat phobic, mindset over there, and it was wild just seeing that in person, and me being a mid-sized woman over in China, I was like,
What are you
"Y'all probably
talking
looking
about?
at me like I am just Godzilla or something." Like, my word.
All
And
right,
then that made me
so
insecure.
we're
Like, "Oh,
starting
no."
a new section of the podcast that we will go through, and maybe no, for real, maybe it's like once a month we bring somebody in and we talk about a different version or culture or whatever of body image and see what it's like, because
Yeah.
obviously at least for Sam and myself, and we're talking about being a white woman, right?
Mm.
And then for those of you guys that are listening as well, I mean, all 4 of us, we are white presenting women.
Yep.
And it definitely will be interesting to see and hear what other cultures and groups and men and women and yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
there's a lot.
I think we'll make it work. We'll make it work. But to kind of start off, when Sam and I were researching and trying to figure out the questions and topics to talk about today, we actually found an article from the Mayo Clinic that was all about how to speak to your kids about body image and the steps to take for that. And we're kind of taking the same thing and putting that in today. So when we are talking about body image, for anybody that it could be a sensitive subject for, we're taking the scientific approach of how to talk about it instead of just turning it into a big pile drive into the ground of negativity.
Yeah.
It's going to be, we're making a sandwich basically, right? We're going to talk
Sandwich,
about some
some
good
would
stuff.
say.
We're going to talk about some hard stuff, and we're going to end it with some good stuff. So To start off with that, what is your guys' favorite part of your self body image right now? And I guess let's go kind of in a circle. So let's start Blue Jay and then we'll wrap around.
What's my favorite part of my body image? I feel like it's I don't know, more generalized versus like I have favorite parts of my body, or is it like favorite parts of my perspective?
I think it could be either. Whatever, if there's a certain part about your, like, if you're just having a down day and you remind yourself this is what makes you feel strong and comfortable as you.
Right. I would say like in terms of like parts of my body, I really dig my collarbone. Like my clavicle, I just love
Ooh.
it. And I think that it's very I don't know, sophisticated with the lines and everything. I have some pictures of myself and I'm just like, this makes me feel good when I look at it. And that makes me very happy and helps me feel more comfortable on a day where I'm just like, "Ugh." In terms of my perspective, I would say that like over the past year, especially, I found like a new confidence in myself and my body and like the ability to like screw being humble. I'm hot and just like own that. Whereas in the past, I felt like I had to like vacillate, or if like someone compliments me, I've had to be like, oh, like thank you, but like, like instead of being like now, I'm just like, no, yes, like yes, I do look good, thank you, and that perspective has totally changed things for me in a way that actively trying to work on my body like with gym or fitness or anything of that sort hasn't affected me in the same way as just being like, no, I'm going to own this. And that like mindset shift, I think, is my favorite thing right now.
Awesome.
I love that.
What about you, Frank?
Um, Kind of a lot of the same. I don't know that I necessarily ever really think of myself as having a favorite part of my body. I don't really think of my body as like parts, I guess, or like pick it apart. I try not to pick it apart that way. And I think for me as a fat person, like that is kind of key to my own self-confidence is to not be constantly like looking at little pieces of my body. And instead, one of the best things and my favorite thing that I do now that I haven't done before is that on those bad days, I go to a body neutral place, which is to say that instead of being like really down on maybe the way my stomach looks or the way my boobs hang or like the little flappies on my arms or whatever, instead I'll look at my arms and say, these are capable arms. They are able to carry things. They pick things up. These legs are strong. They take me from point A to point B. And I can just say, this is a body rather than saying like this is a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's such a powerful thing for me personally, because even then on those bad days, it's not it's not going to a bad place in my brain of like constantly nitpicking myself and pulling myself apart and wishing things were different and moving things around or sort of that sort of thing. It's more like I get to be just kind of in a neutral space and then I can build up from there. And that's been really, really powerful for me.
That's awesome. Like I guess I never put it as that far of a shift, like perspective shift before. Like, you talk about your body being able to do things, but that's a good thing to keep in mind.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess for me it's been a specific journey to love my hips. My hips have always been a journey. I've always been in double number sizes my entire life. Regardless, and I got picked on all the time. That was before like people were cool with hips and butts and stuff. So I got picked on in middle school, picked on in high school, and then finally, like at the end of college, people are like, "Oh yeah, wait, no, we like this now." And it's just like I used to beat myself up and call myself the most horrendous names because I couldn't get rid of the way that my body was built. However, I, like Frank, now thank the fact that I have hips. I've carried so many babies for families without as many issues, like birthing a beautiful thing because my hips are wide. And I'm truly grateful for that. And she kind of got an hourglass because of this, so it's fine. Like she be looking good. Even with like my little extra tummy and stuff, like she fine. So, and not only that, but my shoulders have always been broad because they match my hip shape. And I like to say, you know, God gave me broad shoulders so I could carry a lot. And so I do. And I remind myself of that. I was like, I was built this way so I could carry a lot of weight, and not like physical weight, but like the, weight of the world or people around
Mhm.
me. And I feel confident in that ability. Um, yeah, I don't buckle very easily, but sometimes, I got to alleviate it myself later on. But yeah, so my hips are something I love. They do not lie. Shakira was right.
Those hips don't lie. I can't sing that one because most of the time you can't understand half of what she's saying in that song. For me, it's definitely my favorite part is that my body is still capable of doing new things. With having a chronic illness and everything, my body is definitely uh, shutting down, and it makes me feel good to be able to do headstands and work on handstands and still be able to do cartwheels and flips like I could when I was younger. And my body's still able. That's my favorite thing. And so anytime that I feel down, I'm just like, dude, your body's still doing new stuff because I'm not letting my brain tell it that it's okay to shut down. So
Mm.
that's the cool thing for you ladies. Anyone that listening or watching that doesn't know, I have Lyme disease. So I have chronic Lyme, and my fatigue is top notch. Like right now, I'm really straining to stay awake, and I just took my medicine 2 hours ago, and that's as much as it sustains me. So
You're doing great.
it definitely, yeah, that's my favorite part is that it's still capable. That feels good. Be capable.
Yeah. Sometimes
Uh,
that's all we need to be grateful for is that we're still capable of just
Yeah.
even the smallest things.
has your self body image changed from when you were younger? Like if is and everyone we're all like yes. And I'm curious to if I would ever meet somebody that has never really had a strong negative body image. Is there anybody out there that exists, do you think?
In this society, I really doubt it.
I
Yeah,
really,
not
really
with
doubt it.
social
I mean, you
media.
even see like the people that technically fit into the mold of what society wants, but they still have something negative about them because
I mean,
they.
can anyone fit into the mold of what society wants when they both want you to be stick thin and also to have huge boobs and also to have like a big butt and also a small butt? Like, society
Mhm.
is so conflicting. As soon as you have one thing, they tell you that you should be the other way.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's no
It's
way
very,
for
very true.
Yeah, there's no way for anyone to fit society's mold perfectly because there are some like deeply conflicting views about what is the best quote unquote way to be a human being.
Because it's, like the saying, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And
Mhm.
that's so true. That's why we all have different attractiveness, like to
Mhm.
different people. And it's wild that we all kind of have gone through the idea of like, no, but we have to look a certain way. But what is that certain way? What is it? What have we been trying to achieve?
Right.
I think it's also really telling that like even if you have like let's say the ideal body, like there's going to be something about you that you're insecure about because somebody
Yeah.
probably somewhere when you were younger pointed it out to you, not thinking twice about it, and suddenly you have a complex about your nose. Like you didn't think
Mhm.
anything of it. This is not me personally, but like, that's just a
Yeah.
very common one. Somebody says something about your nose and then you're like, I didn't even know that that was a problem. Like I never
Yeah.
had even considered it, and now all I can think about. So, yeah, I think
You-
for a lot of us, like the idea of having a great body image when we're younger, like define younger. Because when I was really little, yeah, I didn't think at all about how I looked. Like I was out there playing and running and jumping and didn't care. And then at some point that shifted.
Yeah.
Like I got a little bit older and that started to shift, and there started to be more value placed on how I looked. And I think that's when that started to really shift for me. And I had a horrible, horrible uh, time growing up. Like I've always been a fat kid. So like I didn't think about it. And then suddenly it was all I thought about was I should be on a diet from the time that I was probably about 9 years old. And that is very, very young. Yeah. No, you're shocked face. You're shocked
Traumatizing.
Pikachu face.
Oh,
Yeah, but it's
no.
true. Yeah.
I was
Yes.
getting ready for the show today and putting on mascara, and in my head telling myself that that my I got pulled back to being in sixth grade, and a guy. We're not. It's not a guy.
Kid
It's
guy.
a, a boy in sixth grade. The first time that I was asked, without understanding what it meant, was, "Is all my hair blonde like my eyelashes?"
Oh,
And I had no clue what that meant
Disgusting.
oh, I
in
feel
sixth
bad
grade,
That's
all over.
icky.
and
Oh,
it
oh.
still has like stuck with me. I finally am to the point that I don't feel self-conscious not having mascara on. Like, I'm totally fine, whatever. I like being able to see my eyes behind my glasses by having darker eyelashes. But it definitely getting ready today, and I was like running through what we were going to talk about and things that I wanted to make sure to say and all that kind of stuff. And I stopped and I stared and looked in the mirror and saw my blonde eyelashes, and I was like, crap. Why is this all of a sudden coming back from sixth grade? Like, I don't even know which boy it was. He probably is some jerk, having a horrible
Probably
life
still
now because he was mean
stingy.
to me at one point because I believe in karma. But
All
yeah,
it
it was
takes is
just
one comment, one little
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned my chin is lopsided in high school, and it's always been, I might like, look, when I smile, this side's longer than this side.
yeah, and
I
it's just
would
it's
never
just the
ever
little
have noticed
things.
any of
Nobody
that.
will
Like,
notice it, but one
no.
person did, and now it's what I think about when I smile. That's why I don't smile with my teeth a lot, or I have to angle myself a certain way in photos because I'm like, I don't want people to point out that my chin is lopsided because I have a butt chin. So, one cheek's a little longer than the next, and that's fine. But like, but it took me a while to figure out what makes me now comfortable whenever I smile. And I hate that I have to think about that, and I still do. I'm very self-conscious about my lopsided chin.
I remember like not exactly what year, but I remember exactly what like changed my body image perception of myself was when I went through puberty. And my boobs grew in. Like that period, like if you have a larger chest, there's like a period or like a summer, the classic movie, like she came back from
Yeah.
summer and blah
Yeah,
blah.
I was a
And I
woman.
all of a sudden started wearing like baggy shirts. I developed a slouch that took me years and years to correct because I didn't want anyone to notice me in that way. And like that was like a really big deal for me in changing my body image. And then another thing when we're talking about people saying things that stick with you is I remember that my dad used to say that I needed to put on makeup before I went out because I looked dead. And it's those things where like they probably don't sit with the person who says it as
Mm-mm.
hard as they do with the person it's pointed toward. Like I doubt that he still remembers that he used to say that, But I
Yeah.
remember because it like sank into me in a time when I was very impressionable and it's just never gone away. And I feel like that's the thing when someone's saying like about my cleft chin, like Sam, like, or like about like one thing about your nose or whatever, is like the person who said it doesn't live with them in the
No.
way that it lives with you.
You think
All of a
Yeah.
sudden, you're conscious of something about your physical appearance that you never thought of before. Someone points it out, they probably don't mean anything, but now it just like lives with you for years and
Yeah.
years.
I
I think
got
this is
Facebook bullied from my
yeah.
teeth. I had a crossover. It was a bunch of military wives. They pulled a picture of me on a group, and they literally picked me apart and told me what I needed done.
Ugh.
And I got braces that year because I was then so upset that I had a little crooked tooth right here.
Oh my gosh.
My
So,
goodness.
and now like it's starting to do it again because my retainer is just like I don't wear it every night, and I'm freaking out again. I'm like, oh no, people are gonna pick me apart, especially in this industry. It's horrible. I need to fix it. So I've been thinking about going to orthodontics again, and I'm just like, no, stop. You're fine.
All
What were you
right,
saying,
so I
Frank? Sorry,
feel
I cut
like
you off.
we are kind of all spiraling a little bit.
Hang on,
Oh,
Frank was gonna say something.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, like, I think like it's really important to like note where like what got us to a point of like negative self-image, but I think it's also equally important to like acknowledge at what point did you want to like did you notice that that was like a problem and that you wanted to like shift your perspective?
Right.
Because I can tell you that for me it was it was after I had dieted and been the literal thinnest I have ever been, including in high school, and I still was not happy. That's when I was like, I need to change the way I look at myself. I need to change the way I am viewing my body and putting value in my body. And that's when I kind of started, I guess, the journey of like wanting to love myself in a different way, like changing my self image. Because I don't think that that is as apparent, and it's certainly not as talked about. We can talk about for hours why we have terrible self images or why we did, but I don't think we talk about like why did your perspective change? Why did you suddenly think like this is not how I should view myself? Like I should probably do something about this, you know?
And that's actually our next question: is how did you get to
Yeah.
where you are
Look
in
at
our
me.
body, in your body image? Was it a moment that, like Frank said, was it a moment that just flipped a light on for you? Was it a long process of where you just kind of got there? Tools or books, or was there like an activity that really helped you, or anything like that? Let's go background. Oh wait, I'm backwards this time. Let's go around the circle again. So Bluejay, if you want to start.
Oh, I started last time. I'll
You start?
again.
Okay, Sam, you start this time.
Sam starts
Okay.
this time.
So I cannot lie. I actually still very much struggle. I am a very insecure person, and I will be very open about that. Um, I, like Frank, have always been the heavier kid. I'm from a family where everybody's very tall and very thin, but I was a preemie born with my ribs struggling to let my lungs breathe, and so I took steroids pretty much my entire life, and I have been short and stout. And I have been told that by my family my entire life. Every Christmas, every like holiday we get together, they're just like, "Oh, Sam, do you want seconds? Are you sure?" And I'm just like, "No, I don't actually." Or I remember specifically always trying to work out like weeks leading up to going to see family. Like I would just sit there and do crunches, like hundreds of crunches, to try to look thinner, even though my body is built drastically different than the rest of my family because of the health issues I was born with. And that wasn't fair. And I still have to separate that whenever I think of going home to see family because they all look very different than I do. Um, so I am definitely not somebody to preach confidence. I try to root my friends on because I feed off of that energy and it reminds me that I am kind of cute. And there are moments, like there are days where I feel like spicy as heck. I'm like, "Oh yeah, today she's fire." But then tomorrow I'm just like, "Why did I ever think that? Like, Sam, look at you on there." And I have struggled. This is a very trigger warning thing, so I have struggled with eating disorders since I was 11. Um, I've been through it all, and I still struggle every day to make sure that I put something in my body. And now my body is actually currently going through a massive aversion to proteins, and it's disorienting because you crave to be confident and proud of yourself, but I'm not. And so I would love to learn more from y'all because it is, I'm turning 30 soon. It doesn't leave that easily. So don't worry if you're older and you're still struggling. I'm with you. It's not only in your teens.
No.
Um, it's hard, but I'm grateful because I have an incredible partner who's always just like, "Ooh, that's my wife." And I'm like, "Me?"
He's even in chat cheering you on right now.
I know. I love him.
Yeah,
But
that's a good
yeah.
tool right there. You're talking about how like a tool for you is cheering on other people in your life, and a
Hmm.
support system for you is your husband being very
Hmm.
supportive about your body image. Like I think those are two tools, even though they can be external, that have, like you've said, like helped you positively. So like focusing on
Mhm.
those is definitely a good first step.
Yeah. Taking photos of myself is something that I'm using as a tool to
Yep.
look at my body and be proud of it.
Yeah.
Uh, and honestly, whenever I look at all of my babies, I'm just like, I did that. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. You did that. Good
Yeah.
job. You did great. So, I do have my spurts, just as most people, but I'm a very not confident person, but I'm very much working on it every day. So
I
it's
feel
a
like that's
journey.
really the key. Like we talk about like confidence as if it's like a thing you suddenly have and then you just get to have it. But it's not that at all.
Mhm.
It is a thing that hopefully you feel more days than not, right? And I still like I mentioned earlier, I have bad days and I try to go to a body neutral place on those bad days rather than a negative place. And I'm really proud that I have gotten to a point where that is kind of the first instinct is to be like, no, you're getting down on yourself. Let's bring this back around. Let's get to a neutral place today. But it's not just like a one and done thing. You don't just suddenly achieve confidence. And I think that thinking of your self-image journey, I guess, in that way is really helpful because then you can look at the days that maybe you need a little more external validation and you can even like say like, "Hey husband, I don't feel great. Do you mind just just please give me validation.
Tell
Like
me
I
how
just
hot
need
I
it."
Yeah.
Yeah, like tell me that I look good. I think for me a huge one was like taking social media and filling it with people that looked like me so that I wasn't the only person on my feed that looked like me. Because that to me was like really damaging. And it's not to say anything about anybody else's body. It was a me thing. Like it really was a me thing. And I just was like, if I can see more bodies moving and existing in a way that my body does, it helps to normalize the way that my body looks in photos, the way that my body moves, the way that my body just is shaped, the way clothes fit my body. It helped a lot because I was able to, instead of saying like, should look this way on me, but it doesn't,
Yeah.
instead I was looking at it and saying like, oh no, it looks exactly how it should on me. I look great in this, like this is the way my body is supposed to be shaped in these clothes because that is what, my body is, right? That was a huge thing for me was and you're kind of talking about like lifting others up. It was a lot of that. It was a lot of like looking at people that were like me and saying like, well, I think they're foxy. So what's the difference here? Like where is the disconnect happening? And the more I was able to normalize seeing bodies that looked like mine, alongside, more, I guess, like straight sized bodies. I think that was a huge tool for me. That was a huge help to just take it in because media is not doing any favors to show you what your body looks like. It's just showing you what it should look like.
Mhm.
And I just try to remove those shoulds from myself a lot, honestly. And that's
Thank
super helpful.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I was like going through because we were presented with these questions earlier to kind of form like what our tools were, and like it was really some of the things that have been really important to me. I have so many. One, yoga. I find that yoga is very meditative for me. Being able to do the breathing and just like move my body and actually even like no matter where you start in the process, but seeing yourself grow like more flexible or more capable in the poses, which if you commit to a practice, if you're physically able to, obviously, then you do get better over time. And just seeing that process has grown me in confidence in my body because it's like, look what you can do. The meditative aspect of it is huge too, because like I feel like meditation is just universally good for anxiety. I'm just like anxiety all over the
Agreed.
place. The second one, like Frank was saying, is making sure that there is a variance of both body types and skin types on your feed. Like I make sure that I
Hmm.
follow and share not just like thin white women, because it's really important that you see represented in media. Like as an influencer, we have a responsibility to make sure that we are sharing media that contains bodies that are not just one type,
Hmm.
and following people who are not just one type. Like Frank already went over that, but that's definitely like I second that. Um, and thirdly, like one of the most important ones in my overall mental health, but definitely in my body image issues, my therapist talked to me one time about, and this is the thing that comes back over and over again for me, has been super helpful, is that your neural pathways are reinforced the more often like a neuron travels along that path, the more often you have that thought. Those pathways become easier and easier for your mind to just like, I'm just going to go straight down that path. I've done it before. I'll do it again. Imagining those pathways as like the road diverged in the yellow wood. One of them is very well traveled. And so that one will be easier to walk down. It's smoother. You go down there more often. And the other one, the positive body image thoughts, you don't do as often. So it's harder for you to do, and your brain doesn't go there automatically. And the only way to fix that is to force yourself to think those positive thoughts. Like you'll automatically go to the negative, and not to guilt yourself over that, because that's just like the way your brain works. Like you can't just like make yourself feel bad into changing that, you know? So
Right.
you have the negative thought and be like, okay, I'm acknowledging that this happened. I can't prevent it. But what I can do is I can see myself doing it, and I can instead say, no, my body is strong. My body is capable. My body has had, like in Sam's case, like had many beautiful children. Like my body is worthy. And to tell yourself those positive thoughts over again after that negative thought just instinctively happens. And the more you do that, the easier it gets for your brain to just be like, wait a second, I thought a good thing about myself. Like,
Yeah.
it just happened. And like, that's the thing, like both in my struggle with depression and also like navigating body image issues, doing that, like, it's not manual. It's not automatic. I mean, it is manual. It's not automatic.
Yeah.
But
When we
every
talk about like
time,
when we talk about like putting in the work, that is the work, right? Like that is like
Mhm.
the physical work of like I always say like fake it until you make it. So even if you're just saying it out loud, right? Even if you're just like looking in the mirror and saying like, "No, my chin is beautiful when I smile. I love my hips." Like even if you're just saying the words out loud, your body starts like your brain starts to kind of like take that information in. So even if you're like not fully feeling it behind like the feeling behind it, just saying it out loud is super duper helpful. And
yeah.
that's I also like that's where I like say like if you're having a really hard day and even just saying that feels wrong, that's where I go to the body neutral place. I do want to like make a little note that when we talk about a lot of like this body neutral talk, we keep going to like health things like my body is strong, my body is capable. You don't owe anyone health either. Like your value is not also tied to your health. And
Yeah.
I know that, you probably have something to say about that too, Sam. Like thinking about like, my body is capable of new things, but I'm sure on days where your body's kind of like failing you in that way, that has a toll, I'm sure.
It does. When the days that, I can't even imagine lifting my arms up to grab something. It definitely the day where I just don't like my body because it's not,
Yeah.
right? Because it's not capable that day. Um, for me, yoga is another thing for me that definitely I've done it on and off throughout my whole entire life, but in the past maybe 4 years is when I really have like stuck to it and taken it for more than just, a good nap at the end kind of thing. It being able to feel my body move in these lines, in these poses, and you feel so ethereal and like graceful when you can go into a downward dog and then, flip or like glide forward into a plank kind of thing. And just like, I just take every single second that my body is moving and just really hug it
Yeah.
and love the fact that it's like dancing, and it's my way of going from one pose to another is going to be different than anybody else's. So it's my way of my body dancing and feeling cool, and I can feel my muscles move and stuff like that. And that's always been one of my favorite things about myself is that I always have fairly good muscle definition because I've always been a smaller person and a smaller kid. It used to be a negative thing for me to I was made fun of for having a dip in my arms in fifth, sixth grade when other kids didn't, but I just had more muscle definition. And so I was made fun of for being too masculine. And that like that sucked because I wore long sleeve shirts, right? All the time to cover up the dip in my arms when really I should be like, yeah, I'm strong. I could do more pull-ups on the monkey bars than anybody else kind of thing, because that's just how it is. So yoga and meditation 100%. And Sam's probably sick of me talking about this damn book, but every single time we talk about
Good book.
books that help me, it's literally The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. It's the best book ever in existence. It's so good. And every single time that I let other people affect my self-image, it's different when I affect my own. But when I let other people affect my self-image, I just go right back into the things that I've read in that book. And one of the biggest things that I pull just for my own self from the book is the desire for a positive experience as a negative experience, and accepting your negative experiences as a positive experience. And that just like blew my mind. If I'm standing there and staring at the mirror and being like, man, I wish I was a little bit more toned. By the way, I hate that word. No, you can't just tone your body, please.
It's not a word that makes sense.
Yeah. They're like, I just want to tone my butt. And I'm like, you don't just tone your butt. You build muscle and you lose fat. Like, that's what that is, right?
Yeah. Frustrating saying of if you can't tone it, tan it. That's what I used to do. I would go out and tan because I was like, I can't tone it, so I might as well be darker.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
so me standing in the mirror and looking at my body and being like, I don't like the dip in my hips and whatever kind of thing. I stand there and remind myself that I'm creating this negative experience because I'm desiring something else. And I will never be happy if I'm constantly desiring something else. If I accept that, yes, I have dips in my hips. And you know what? That's just the way my body is. I've always had it. I've always had a bump in my arm where my muscle changes. That's how my body is. Sam, you've said that you accepted your hips because they birthed beautiful babies, and you've been able to help families have families. And when you accept those things and turn them into something that's just part of you, you're not spending a lot of your brain energy trying to change it. And yeah, obviously it's going to be hard sometimes to accept certain things about you based on your experiences in life, but as soon as I feel like I'm getting an outside influence on how I look or how I feel about myself, I just am like, it's just a waste of brain energy for me to care what other people are thinking. And it's only been 3-4 years that I felt that way. I'm going to be 35 in 2-3 months. So it's definitely something that, like Sam said, it's not just teenagers that are feeling it. It's people that are even older than me, and so
it's a forever journey.
Yoga, that book, and accepting my negative experiences as positive ones, and not seeking out positive experiences and enjoying what I have. My biggest things. It's so cool to see everybody have like some similarities, but we all have different things that like really pull for us. And so I'm hoping that people that are listening are definitely finding something that they connect to.
Yeah. What were we saying, Frank?
Oh, I was just going to kind of echo that same thing. Like, I think it's really important to note that like, it's not just one thing, but also like you may weigh certain things differently. So same idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in how I dress myself, oh my gosh, I always hide my arms. Nobody's ever pointed it out. But if you look at my clothing now, you'll notice it. Even like my short sleeves, they at least go to here. So it's just an insecurity. But that's not even just with like a weight thing. That's actually because of my surrogacies through hormone shots. I have body acne. And that is something that has been a mind mess up for me because I was actually really blessed as a kid. I never had acne until I did hormone injections, and then it went chaotic. And I just got off Accutane 2 weeks ago, and as clear as my skin is now, suddenly I discovered in the last week I now have eczema because of that, and that is a side effect. And so now it's on my arms, and I'm just like, world.
I think acknowledging though that like adjusting the way you dress can be a tool
Yeah.
I
to
feel
help you
confident in
feel
what I wear.
Yeah,
yeah, to help
exactly.
you feel better. Like you don't have to wear spaghetti straps if you don't want to. Like
I don't even
the
own
way
one.
that you dress is about you feeling comfortable and confident and sexy, and it's not about anybody else, you know?
Mhm.
I think
So if you're saying like I don't like to show my arms, like yes, you want to get to a place where you can be like fuck it, I don't care what anyone else thinks when they look at me.
Mhm.
But a tool can absolutely be like I feel better when I'm wearing a shirt that has sleeves. Like just period. Like okay, so wear a
Yeah.
shirt that
yeah,
has sleeves and feel good. Like that is totally valid as a tool to feel better about yourself.
I think
I
understanding
completely agree.
the way that clothes work on your body and but not going by the stupid mi pair or a ruler or an apple or an inverted I hate those. I hate those. We are not fruit and we are not shapes or we are not school supplies.
I'm not a banana.
What?
What?
You're having a crisis. But I think finding the way that clothes fit you in a way that you feel good and feel confident, and that way you're not sitting there and focusing on the things that make you feel negative because you're looking at your whole entire body and being like, my outfit is cool and I look so cool and pretty and whatever, spicy
Yeah.
or hot or sexy, whatever you're wanting to feel that day. And I think that tool of clothes is like one of the greatest things that we can use
Yeah. Look at me
to.
and Frank. We did daisies today because
I
we said
know.
that
I
was
got
cute.
ruffles. I normally don't wear
Oh,
like
great.
ruffles, but I'm
Like,
totally going ruffles today.
look at it.
Right?
Wait, I just noticed that you and Bluejay have like the gray.
Oh
You
my
got the
gosh,
gray
we do
on?
kind of
Yes!
match.
And then you got
We
the
both have
daisies.
daisies.
Did we sync
Oh,
again?
magic.
Why
Oh
is
my
this
We really
thing
did.
gosh.
Why is this 3 weeks in a row we're matching?
Look at the daisies?
Well, and I think that part of that can also be like when you follow people who have similar body types to you, that can
Mhm.
also guide you in finding clothes that look better and feel better on your body.
Mhm.
Yes.
Like that's definitely like if you are following people who are all like thinner and you're seeing clothes on them and then you buy the same shirt and it doesn't look the same
Not the
on you,
same.
like that can be very detrimental to your mental image. But if you are following someone who is more your like body size or shape and you see a shirt on them and you're like, oh, that looks good, it's more likely to also look good on you because you're following a model who has a similar frame to you. And like that's very
Right.
important in having that
Yeah.
variety and being able to be like, I like this shirt, I saw it, I got it, it also looks good on me. Like those are all positive reinforcing processes.
Yeah.
We
I
just
will say though,
applaud businesses that do that have
Yeah.
2 different models on their website.
Yeah. It's getting more
And
common, thankfully. Yeah.
yes, it
Yeah.
just is. I mean, I 90% buy secondhand, so it's very hard on secondhand websites, right? Too, because it's just a picture of the shirt. But usually
Yeah.
I'll try to go and find a shirt or a similar style on the actual websites, and it's so nice to see just the variety of things, where you can see how things, and especially when it's more than just a smaller figure and a larger figure. They have someone that's tall and someone that's short that's in there as well, because everything
Mhm.
fits
Yes.
differently, especially in the women. That's a whole other topic. Is sizing in the women's industry.
Oh my
Oh
god.
my
Oh,
gosh.
I could rant.
we all instantly just touched our heads like, oh no.
Like your pant size is not the same across the board. I follow or subscribe to so many body positive people on YouTube and watch them do clothing hauls. And there's sometimes where it's like, I'll try a size 16 in all of these, and they're all different. And it's just
Mhm.
like, why? Why is this
Even
an
with the
issue?
same brand sometimes. It's like
Yes.
in one
Levi's is the
style
worst.
pant, I'm wearing a 20 something, in another style pant, it's a different size. And I'm like,
Mhm.
cool.
I just experienced
Good.
that at Target and I was not happy. The size
Yeah.
4
yeah.
fit me better than the size 2, but the size 2 was too big. But then the other size, like the other style, it was the other way around. I was just so confused. But they were both high-rise pants, so I was like, shouldn't they fit on the top the same? And it's just like the legs. I don't know. I don't get it. I returned them all, and they're like, "Was anything wrong with them?" When I handed them back, and I'm like, "Yeah, none of them are accurate." No,
Guys are
thank you.
sucks.
We've kind of talked about this a little bit here and there, but did you ever? I'm just gonna flat out say it, I guess. Did you ever experience body shaming, and how did you handle that? And did you believe it? Sometimes people will be like yada 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 about you, but you're already in that mental place that you're like, yeah, right. No, this is perfect. This is fine.
Do you want to start us off?
Mm.
Yeah, I'll start us off for this one. My body shaming experience is opposite of what majority of body shaming experiences are. As I was skinny shamed is kind of the term of it. I was told I was not allowed to feel self-conscious because I fit more into a normalized whatever body that society was presenting, and it sucked because then I internalized a lot of that feeling in me that I wasn't allowed to be upset about my arms, and I wasn't allowed to be upset about XYZ. And even now, as I get older and I talk about it, I still get people that'll message me and they'll be like, well, if only you were like this, then you could actually truly feel what I feel. And I was like, okay, I mean, I understand you have a valid story and a valid point too, but your story's not my story. And that's where I really had to like shut down the whole not caring what other people think. Because a lot of people are not going to be in the same camp as me. And it definitely took a huge toll on me for wanting to cover up because I was more muscular and more defined and stuff like that. And even after having babies, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I'm so jealous that your body went back to normal. And in my head, I'm like, since high school, I've gained X amount of weight and I'm never going to be that high school weight again. And so I have that internal struggle. I eventually, I still feel it. I still have people that tell me that I can't be upset when people shame me for my size. I don't know how to handle that other than to just give them the imaginary middle finger and then ignore them. And that might be the only way. I don't know. Maybe you guys have perspective on that too. But it definitely is always struck with me. And I can trace it back to 5th grade. And I know exactly where I was standing on the playground. I know exactly who was in that group with me. And one of them was my best friend for the many, many years. And it sucked. I mean, eventually that person proved that they weren't a good friend anymore. So, that's fine. See you later. But that I still feel it. But now I just more take stock in people's opinions that I admire. And I definitely try to not be self-deprecating when people are like, oh my gosh, you look so good at that. And then instantly I want to be like, no, I don't because of this or whatever. I am practicing and working on being like, I should have been the one that told you first that I looked good in these pants because that's what my brain needs to be. And so when people are like, yeah, you look so good when you're doing whatever, since I post a lot of my yoga stuff on Instagram and everything, and it takes me a second to read their comments, and thank God it's not in person because I don't know how I would react so quickly. But it just takes me a second to read their comments and then go back and watch whatever video or picture that I posted and watch what they're seeing, being like, yeah, that is exactly it. That's what my brain knows, but I just need to be able to see it to like confirm that's what I feel. So definitely having people that I admire compliment me. I mean, and it's different. Like if you have a significant other, they're going to compliment the crap out of you because they like you for you. And that's
Hopefully,
it.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
not that
hopefully.
it doesn't mean the same, right? But if you get the same compliments from the same person, sometimes it's nice to get a compliment from outside of that. That makes sense. But I
Yeah, it
mean,
starts to weigh less, right? Because you're like,
right.
you almost expect it from that person. Like, of
Yeah,
course you think that. You love me. You'd have to say that. And you start to
exactly.
like value it less. Yeah,
But
totally.
at the same time, like I don't want to devalue my husband's butt slaps every single morning when he walks out into the kitchen.
I think it's important to keep that perspective because like when you do start to kind of be like, I want that from an outside person because like, you're like expecting it from your significant other. Um, reminding yourself that like, no, they have a choice too. Like they
Yeah.
don't have to say those things. They don't have to do those things.
Yeah.
They have a choice too. Like they do actually mean those things, and kind of reminding yourself that it's not just like an automatic just because they're with you. They
Right.
are going to say those things. Yeah.
So Benjamin,
for
if you are listening or watching, please keep smacking my butt all the time.
Do it. Do one for me tomorrow.
I want a handprint bruise.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Sam,
Bluejay,
do you want to go?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
No, I'll go last this time.
Okay, Frank, do you want to go? We'll mix it up.
I'll go around with
Yeah,
Frank.
I can go. I definitely have experienced body shaming in my life. I think that like in the same way that you're like, oh, my experience is different than the norm. My experience was the norm. I was chubby growing up. I am fat now. Like I have always been a heavy person, and I've always been told. I've I think the thing that has stuck with me the most is how much people assume my health and my fitness levels based on my size. Um,
Hate that.
people very, very much assume that my body is incapable of a lot of things because of the size of my body. And it's not that it's incapable. It might have to do things differently. When you talk about doing yoga, like I physically sometimes have to move my belly out of the way in order to get into a pose. I'll have to like pick it up and like kind of scoot it, you know? And that's just like a reality of me doing yoga. But like it's not that I'm not able to do yoga. I'm not able to hold the poses. It's not that I'm not able to do those things. I just have to kind of like do it a little bit differently. I move my body differently. My dance is different than yours.
Hmm.
And that I think is the thing that has stuck with me that I've had to kind of like work on the most is like removing my capabilities and removing my health from the way that my body looks, and then trying to hopefully convince other people that my value is not in either of those things. And that, when you say you're worried about my health and you're worried that I'm going to die an early death because of my weight, like you don't actually mean that. You just want to it's my aesthetics. Um, and in the past, it really did stick with me. I think when I was younger, that was the root of a lot of what I went through, and a lot of what pushed me to do certain things was like this hatred of the way that my body looked, even though it was a natural way that my body looked. If I just like eat in a way that other people eat, my body sits at a heavier weight. It just does, right?
Mhm.
Like it's not me like being an unhealthy person and constantly putting all of this like disgusting garbage in my body that has suddenly ballooned me up into this shape, right? It's just this is the way my body kind of wants to be. And if I think of it that way, and I kind of like reframe everything, and then I think like just because my body is this shape doesn't mean that I'm not able to go for mile-long hikes, like miles of hiking and hilly forests, right? Like I can still do those things. Just because I did, I look this way doesn't mean that I can't, put my body into a downward dog the way everybody else can, right? Like that was super duper helpful for me to be able to kind of shift my perspective of like what health meant, because I really did grow up basically being told that I competitively rode horses. And there's one memory that really sticks out to me where I was more or less told that in order to be competitive, I would have to lose weight, because the kind of the aesthetic of the whole genre was just that thinner person was like the picture wasn't right, is what I was told.
Hmm.
And I remember thinking like, okay, I guess I have to lose weight because I want to be competitive to do this. And I was young. I was like 13 years old when that happened. And I remember very distinctly thinking like, I'm not thin enough to be competitive. And like going home and like dieting. And that was probably, again, trigger warning. The root of all of my eating disorder issues was kind of around that time, of really like heavily thinking like this is gonna this is gonna make this better. I'm going to be better because of this. And spoilers, I wasn't, and it took me a very long time to kind of shift that perspective. And we already talked about all of the tools that we did, but I handle it much differently now. When people come in to stream and they call me fat. Fat to me is, I've said it how many times on this podcast already, but like fat to me is not a shameful word. I know there are a lot of people that aren't quite there yet. So I try to keep it When it's directed at me in a very clearly derogatory way, I try to keep it out of my chat simply because I understand that for other people, being called fat or watching somebody else be called fat is a very, very triggering and negative experience. For me, it's not. If you call me fat, I'm just kind of like, yeah, are you tall? I'm also brunette. Like I have size
What
9
other
feet.
descriptors do you have
Like
for me?
congrats. Congrats, you're a kindergartner and you understand skinny is the opposite of fat and like you understand descriptors, right? Yeah, it's like a very neutral term for me and it's not been easy to get to that point, but I think now that I'm there, I handle it so much differently when people try to get under my skin by calling me fat. I'm like, all right, come at me, come insult my intelligence, because that's what's really gonna hurt. Like I don't this stuff does not bother me. And again, it's because like you already said this, but you try to look at people whose opinion you value more means more, right? Like
Mhm.
I would never take advice from somebody, or I would never take criticism from somebody that I wouldn't take advice from. So that random person that's coming in, like, I don't need your criticism because I don't know you. I don't trust you. I don't want to, knowing that this is how you treat people either. So it's a very different experience from when I was younger to now. But at this point, I often handle it with a lot of grace. Some days you're not quite as ready. And on those days, you just try to like move yourself from the situation as much as possible. But now it's more of like a "and what?" kind of response, you
I
know?
like that you said that you handle it with grace. And, you know, we always say this to Charlie when he's like, why do people mean to me and everything? And I'm like, it's usually because their life sucks today. And that's why. And they can't think of anything
Exactly.
better to do than make everybody else's life suck around
Yeah.
them.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it just, it's a good place to get to really understand that when people are being mean to you, it's very rarely about you.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
always about
Yeah.
them.
I
And
think
I
that
think
online
that's
people also like have the idea that like for some reason creators and like influencers or people with following like must accept criticism from anyone who levels it. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's somehow like you're mean or bad if you refuse to accept someone's criticism. And
Mhm.
it's like, no, actually, like when you're an author, like you have an editor who is trained and professional, and their job is to come in and look and tell you what like informed critique. Like their job is to do that. You wouldn't just accept like a layman off the streets idea of what your book should be, you know?
Right.
And like I don't need to accept like everyone's idea of what my photos should be or what my fashion should be or any of these things related to like my job or body image. Like because I did not ask for your critique. And when I do ask for critique, I ask for it from like informed professionals or friends that I
Mhm.
trust, people that I know, one, know my taste, and two, whose taste, like their taste, I trust. So I'm getting informed and educated critique versus just like anyone on the internet can say anything. It's like, no, actually, like your criticism does not have value to me merely because you presented criticism. Like that's not how it works.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
and I feel like for me, my experience with body shaming is very different just because like I model as my profession. And so like there's a lot of times where and I think like this is one thing with everyone, like there's internal body shaming that happens, but for me it can be like I both have the regular like body voices in my head saying like, oh, I don't like this, oh, I don't like that. But then I also have like the professional like I don't like how my body looks in this specific photo. And then I have the voices of like the people online who are looking at my work
Mm.
and criticizing the way that I look in like my work. And so it can be really hard, especially when the way like and I think that this can be in other professions as well, like another extent in Twitch streaming, but like the way that I look is directly tied into my income. Like, I feel like, and I don't think this is true, but I feel like if I were to gain weight, then my income might lessen. I do not think that is actively true because I have been 25 to 30 pounds heavier than I am now and still making money as a model. I think that that's a very mental, like a message I'm sending myself that isn't correct. But it is like one of those things where I'm hyper conscious of the way my body looks because I'm taking like thousands of photos of it in
Mm.
different poses and in different ways. And of those thousands of photos, we like narrow it down to like a few dozen that are what we want to show, but there are still like so many that nobody sees. And it's just like another whole level of like body analysis that has made it like incredibly difficult to be like non-judgmental about my form when part of my job is to be judgmental about my form, you know?
Right.
Um, but I feel like one of the most important things that I've learned in terms of body shaming is like what Sam, Mrs. Dr. Lupo was saying about like, actually, I don't care. Like I don't give a fuck. When I've done a lot of posing like out in public, where there are like people around, like I went to a river in Washington and I stood in the river nude, like completely nude. And there were kayakers like just across the way. Like you might not know that when you see the pictures, but they were there. And it's just the idea of like in my head, I'm like, I will probably never see these people again in my entire life. So why does their opinion matter to me?
Mm-hmm.
Like I won't. Like I will
Yeah.
not see them. I'm not going to engage with them. Like if it's someone who follows me, I can easily just block them and move on. Like I don't have to allow them to engage with me. So why am I taking their opinion to heart? And like that's like what Frank was saying too, like echoing a lot of statements that have been made, but just the idea of like I get to choose whose opinion matters to me. And like if you're saying something shitty, it's not you.
Yeah.
Like I do like there are times when like negative critique from a peer or a friend is helpful, not usually in negative critique about bodies is usually not helpful, but like in other things. Like I'm
Yeah,
not
for
saying I
sure. Yeah.
never take negative criticism, but like when it's coming from a very negative place, like you can make the choice, and it's again practice. It's very difficult, but you can make the choice to say like I don't know you and I don't care.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
I can connect
Um,
with you on the photography part because I had a photography business for 10 plus years. And I did a lot of families, a lot of boudoir. And the whole point of the boudoir sessions was to help women boost their confidence. Every single mom that came through my studio or through my camera, I talked to them about boudoir sessions on the side. And I even got to the point with my weddings that I was giving boudoir sessions away to the brides because it just was so important for me to have women just have that moment of feeling themselves and feeling
Yes.
everything about them. But I didn't like, so with you as the model, you get to look at probably a lot of the images, right? And then narrow them down or whatever. For me, they didn't get to see the pictures other than the ones that I presented to them. But before we'd take our pictures, we'd have a long 15, 20-minute conversation. And I would say, I want you to tell me the things that you love about yourself. We'd always start there. We'd always start with the positive. And as soon as they would start talking about the negative, I'm like, we're not there yet. Keep going with the positive things about you. And we would talk about that for the majority of it. And then right at the very end, I'd be like, all right, now that we have that all built up in our brains, all the things that we love, I'm so excited to check out like your collarbone. And I'm so excited to accentuate your hips. And I'm so excited to show off your hands because you really love how long and elegant your fingers are or whatever. If there is anything that you want me to be more conscious about, let me know. And that's how I'd phrase it is be conscious because I'm not going to erase anything about them. I'm not going to touch them up or whatever. What can I be conscious about? And then they would tell me and then they would start going on all this. I'm like, all right, no, we're done. That's all I need to know is I need to know what to keep in mind. And I will tell you how we're going to, if you aren't happy with your stomach, you know what? Then we're going to do a lot of really elongating poses and we'll drop your hand over your stomach and nobody's going to know other than me and you. But we're not going to talk about it. And as soon as they would get on the bed or whatever, and then they would be like, how's my stomach look? I'm like, nope, we're not talking about it. You know what? Right now, your shoulders look ridiculously strong and your hip, because we're popping it up with a little pillow. Man, you have like the curves of whatever kind of thing. And I refused to let my girls talk negatively about themselves while they were being so vulnerable to me.
I am a
And
huge proponent of like having an experienced boudoir photographer take photos of you as being like a massive confidence booster. Like it's so you have obviously someone professional, like not just
yes,
like have
no, nothing
someone who
sketchy,
doesn't know what
please.
they're doing. Like if someone professional, like a professional boudoir photographer takes a session with you, I fully believe like it definitely changes a lot of the ways that people think of their own body.
Yeah.
Super helpful. Yeah.
I've had somebody as young as 18, or 19, sorry, because 19 is legal in Nebraska. Someone as young, she was only like 2 weeks into being 19, but she was getting married. And I'm like, thank goodness I know your birthday, because 2 weeks prior to this would be illegal. So as someone as young as 19 and as old as 50. And she came in because she made a bucket list when she was 30 or 40, I think. And then over 10 years, she was trying to knock out as much as she possibly could on her bucket list. And doing some kind of like daredevil event like skydiving or bungee jumping was still on that list. She showed me next to a boudoir session. And I was like, girl, why are you presenting this wonderful thing about your body as scary as jumping out of an airplane? and it shouldn't be that way. And she was just like, you know what? No, it shouldn't be that way. But I'm 50 and I don't know what to do. And I'm like, I will tell you. That is why you came to me. And let's like, you just went and got your hair and makeup done across the street at a salon. You look hot right now. You brought 10 million different outfits. We'll find the 5 that you are paid for to do, because otherwise I'm giving you 1,000 pictures. And yeah, I 100% just going to throw that out there one more time. Male or female. But, this tends to lean more towards female.
The photographer I work with has done some really great boudoir, though. Like,
so many people ask me to do boudoir, and I just don't know if I am mentally there without being like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Or like couples boudoir. I had someone ask me for couples boudoir, and I just looked at them and then instantly imagined them naked, and I was like, no, I don't know if I'm ready.
Ready for this. Not your comfort
I'm
level
not mature enough for this.
I just saw like a horror TikTok basically where somebody was doing couples boudoir and basically like brought them into their kink of having them be a voyeur. And I was like, oh, no.
Oh. Here's a quick side story.
Consent is really important, friends.
I live in Omaha, Nebraska, and our photography community here is very close knit. I'm no longer technically a part of it because I haven't been doing photography for the past couple of years, but they have multiple groups that they all help each other out. Someone's sick, people come in and take their sessions. They have yearly events that they get together and just trade stories and whatever. We have multiple garage sales throughout the year that you can go shop other photographers' props. Like, it's just a great supporting community. It also is very helpful because what year is it? It's probably about time for this guy to come back up again. This guy for many years has never done anything that we could get him arrested, but he has messaged multiple boudoir photographers and asked for boudoir, and the ones that say that yes, they'll do it, then they take him into their questionnaires and stuff like that. And it always ends up with him asking if somebody else can come in and watch, or if they will be involved, or if he can pay more to have them take pictures of him doing other stuff and everything. And but then all of a sudden, all the stories start flooding into this community where we're like, oh yeah, it's whatever his name is. It's John. John's back.
At least he asked. Right?
Yeah, I feel like asking is like, at least you then can be like, nope, not comfortable with any of that. Thanks.
Right. I just think, I honestly, because he waits about every 2 to 3 years and he goes through a fresh round of young new boudoir photographers that are just trying to get a gig so they can get money.
That's kind of sketch. Yeah.
It's very predatory when he has so many reports on him from us. So yes, please, make sure that you go to somebody reputable, because it can be on the other way around, male or female, if they're your photographer. But boudoir images, yes.
I just want everyone to come and shoot with my photographer, Dana, because she's just a goddess and I love her so much. I just like everyone should shoot with Dana. She's great.
I've done 3 boudoir sessions. And I think I will continue every, 5 years or whatever to take another
Mhm.
one, because it's so interesting to see my confidence change, whether it's
Yeah.
higher or lower. I mean, it might be lower
Mhm.
1 year when I take pictures, but
Mm.
I can look back at it and be like, why was I sad? Because damn, do I look great? Like, it's I could go
What
on.
was it?
It's so good.
Yeah.
There's that Schitt's Creek quote where Moira Rose is like, "Take naked pictures, even if you think you look scary. When you look back on them 50 years from now, you'd be like, why did I think that?"
Exactly.
The Moira Rose quote. I saw that part of Schitt's Creek and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so right. I love her.
Before we wrap up, we've been talking again about it throughout the whole entire time, but thoughts on social media and traditional media, so like TV, movies, advertisements, shaping the way we perceive our bodies. Does anybody have any like big throw out right away thoughts on it? Otherwise, we can go around. Sam, go.
It's like,
Because
yes.
I experienced it
Everybody should.
yesterday. So yesterday we had a bunch of traditional media actors and then of course our creators, influencers and stuff from online. And while we were sitting in green room, me and a couple of the other girls were all talking about like, is our outfit okay? And like we're from two different areas. It's just like, is it okay for camera? And let's go touch up on our hair and makeup and everything like that. So you're conscious of it everywhere. Like
Mm.
I think that there is no line. I think it's still very apparent that it is across all boards. That's for sure. I mean, and honestly, yesterday I watched a couple clips of myself on stage. I'm very self-conscious of my full body on camera. Because I look good in mirrors. Like I can see myself and I'm like, oh yeah. But it's true. The camera likes to add 10 pounds is what they say. But that's because it's getting all these angles that you're not used to as well. And I actually felt really nice about myself yesterday, even seeing camera angles. And that was very different for me. But I think it was because I was also on an extreme high. Like,
Mm.
I felt so good about my performance yesterday. So I was like, yeah, and I look good doing it too. Yesterday was a good mental day for me. But no, like all the girls were still subconscious and still checking on each other's outfits. And it's like, oh, are these on properly? Like, should I like move my shirt down a little bit more this way so that, boobs like to give a boxy look. And it's like, well, so I don't look boxy here. And it's just like, you look great.
It's so
You
funny
do.
to see that what your eyeballs see about you looks completely different than what other people's eyeballs see about you.
I
Like
will
when
say, when
people,
y'all were talking about your stuff, I was getting like mad that people said anything negative to y'all. But then I'm thinking, but I'm okay if people say it to me because it's true.
Yeah.
Like my brain was like, because they're right.
yeah,
And whenever y'all were saying your stuff, I didn't get a chance to talk, but that's okay. I was just like, I just want to hug you all and fight everybody coming at y'all because they're wrong. But like, why are they right to me? That's the problem.
They're
Yeah,
not, is the thing.
I
Fight them
know.
too.
That's a
I'm curious to see what social media will be like as our kids and even as we get older.
yeah.
I
Like,
think that one of the biggest things I've seen with social media is the shift from when, I mean, I grew up when the internet wasn't even a thing. And then it became a thing as I was like in my most formative years. I mean, I think we're all like roughly same age, so probably had a similar idea of like what this was. But when I was growing up, social media was, and traditional media as well, were like not representative of me. And very much like if you look back on movies, like the fat characters in movies from when we were growing up were people that were so much thinner than I was. And I like now I look back at it and think like that's because in the 90s, like heroin chic was the look, like
mhm.
emaciated was the look. And that was really, really difficult. But now I think honestly, there is almost a benefit to social media if you curate your feed for you. There's so many people out there that are pushing like all bodies being beautiful, like talking about being mid-sized, talking about their curves and their hip dips and their, talking about like just this is my body and this is how it moves. And I think that if we continue on that trajectory is exactly where we need to be going with social media is just everybody feeling this freedom to represent themselves and see other people that they feel like represent themselves as well. That's a beautiful shift that I'm loving being a part of it. And I love that it's happening at all. And I wish that I just wish that I had grown up with this. Like, I think of all of the young minds that are being shaped by this, and I'm just like, thank goodness it's not what I grew up with, because you do not need that and you do not want it, I promise.
I totally agree. And the idea that like now we have the ability to shape the input that we're getting from social media in a way that I don't think that we could as much when we were kids, because when we were
Mm,
younger and there wasn't like there was just Facebook maybe like
yeah.
or these things didn't exist. Influencers wasn't really a career. Like you were only
Mhm.
getting from magazines and billboards
Yep. Yep.
and
Yep. Yep.
movies. And in that way, like it was a very standardized way of how you quote unquote should look. The heroin chic, being like the way that people usually term the very like flat chested, very like straight, like no curves or anything of the 90s. But the idea that now there are many more independent influencers who are pushing the brands even to do much better in presenting a wider range of body sizes and body types and like heights also like petite versus like very tall, muscular versus very thin. Like there's a lot of different shapes and sizes of body that we're seeing even in like billboards and like Victoria's Secret advertisements and television and movies now versus what we used to. And I think that is all led by people going out on social media and seeking out the models and the influencers who look like them.
Mhm.
And I
Hmm.
think that actively doing that work, like it might not be the standard, like when you're put onto TikTok or when you're put onto Instagram, the first thing that the algorithm pushes is, thin white woman,
Yeah.
or like large breasted, young, white person. That's very like still the standard. I do
Yeah.
also think that like when you do the work to like seek out like I'm going to look at this person's page and then they'll share something that's also another like non-normative body type and then they'll share something and like I've mostly found a wider range of body images and looks through like following each influencer that I like and following the people that they like and then growing your sphere in that way. And I think that by doing that work and finding the images that support your own mental health and body image being healthier for you. Like I feel like it's only positive and like by each individual person doing this work, we encourage the larger brands to be like, wait, in order to stay relevant, we also need to do the work of finding models that are more representative of our audience. And like that's just the best.
Yeah.
You know who's someone who's kind of dropped off the map is Victoria's Secret.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
way
Well,
behind. They're so behind with
yeah, and
representation.
Yeah.
it's because when they talk about plus size, the people that they hire to be plus size models aren't even what we would classify like in that community as mid-sized, which is
Right.
like below
Yeah.
small fat, right?
I was gonna
Like,
say they're smaller than me. I'm
right.
mid-size, and I'm just
That's what
like,
I'm
"That's
saying is like
something."
they're not even mid-sized. We're going back to like when we talk about like being in the 90s and this person was the fat, the fat representation in the movie. Like that's the body type. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but 20 pounds heavier than stick thin is not heavy. It's just
Mhm.
not. It's not. It's not. That's a very just body. That's a body. That's just
Yeah.
that's
Yep.
not a heavy body. You're not representing anyone of the heavier community with that. And I think that's part of the reason I like that we're seeing like a push for less relevancy from those kinds of brands, because if you're not on board with this, you're not getting support is kind of what it is. And I think that is something that, as Blue Jay said, is coming from social media and then being pushed in more into traditional media. We're starting to see not great fat representation, but more representation, I think, of just bodies in general. I think we're starting to see that sort of kind of leak into a traditional media, even if it's not the first go-to that these companies are going for. It's still like something that we are asking for, and they're kind of getting pushed out and phased out if they're not willing to comply. And yeah, I think that's a good thing. I hope it's a good thing overall anyway.
I do know that we need to wrap up. Before we do, if you had one phrase or something to tell somebody that's out there struggling with body image, physically, mentally, what would that? Anybody wants to jump in first?
Your value as a person and your worth as a person is not tied to how you look. The end. Like that's point blank. Period. That's it.
I think we can just leave it at that, right?
I feel like that's the thing. Yeah, that's the summation. Frank said it the best way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
a good
think
one.
let's just leave that there then, because I don't even know
I
what else
have
to
a-
say. Like, yeah, that's perfect. Real quick before we bounce, thank you, ladies, so much for coming. Bluejay, where can we find you out in the world?
Perfect. I'm Bluejay. You can find me over on Twitter at Bluejay_712. You can find me on Instagram at Bluejay, Twitch at Bluejay. All my links are everywhere. So thank you so much for having me on the show. I really had a great time.
Yeah.
Thank
And Frank, what
you.
about you?
I am Frank the Pegasus everywhere, so you can find me on Twitch and Twitter. I do a lot of the body positivity stuff on Twitter mostly, but we talk about it constantly on Twitch
Yeah.
as well. So yeah, I had a great time. Thank you so much for inviting myself and Bluejay on to talk about this. I feel like we could talk for 10 more hours. about
Right.
it.
And thank you for helping us kind of spearhead realizing that we need to do more conversations. So hopefully you guys will come back and listen and watch our other conversations. But yeah, I think we're good. We'll see you guys all next week, Friday at 8:30 a.m. Pacific, right here